Following it all here on Live Now from Fox very, very closely. We're also keeping an eye on the economy as some big news coming in today as the U.S. economy posted a solid job growth in January as employers hired at a steady pace to start 2026. This is as the Federal Reserve evaluates the need for rate cuts in the months ahead. Fox Business correspondent Edward Lawrence has this report.
The economy started off the year strong. 130,000 jobs added for the month of January. The expectation was 70,000. The unemployment rate fell to 4.3%. The expectation for that was 4.4%.
I think it speaks to the strength of the economy. It speaks to how robust it is, and it doesn't, it doesn't speak to we need a rate cut tomorrow. We're not going to get one, but it only speaks to a rate cut if they in fact start to shrink the balance sheet. That's the only way that I see them cutting rates.
Jobs were added in healthcare, professional and business services, and construction. Losing jobs for the month, financial activities, and government. The average hourly earnings rose 3.7%, jumping 0.4% month over month, showing wages rising faster than inflation.
We are now, again, a consumer-centric economy, not necessarily funded by the government and taxpayers. And so we love seeing that. We love seeing the real wage growth. I think that's critically important.
The revisions for the month of November and December show 17,000 fewer jobs were added than first believed. The Labor Department also cut prior job numbers, stretching back nearly 2 years. Looking at 2024, the U.S. produced only 1.2 million jobs versus the previously estimated 2 million. Last year, the labor market added just 181,000 jobs. The previous estimate was 584,000. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence has been cited as the force behind some layoffs. At the same time, job listings looking for people with AI skills are rising fast.
Last year was all about working on AI. Is it Google? Is it Microsoft? Is it Amazon? This year is all about working with AI. What is AI going to do to certain sectors? And it's really important to focus on diffusion, on how we get AI into the economy.
The Fed's next policy meeting starts on March 17th. The markets anticipate that a pause on rate cuts will continue. At the White House, Edward Lawrence, Fox Business.
All right, thank you so much for that, Edward. Let's be joined right now by Jeffry Bartash from MarketWatch. I appreciate your time here on Live Now from Fox. And obviously, the initial headline is a positive one in terms of these jobs being grown by 130,000 in the month of January. We did have to wait a little bit because of the partial shutdown to see these. What do you make of it, and what are people saying about this recent jobs report?
It's hard to find anything bad in the January jobs report. It came as welcome news after an awful 2025 labor market, as your reporter just noted. Economy added roughly 100,000 new jobs, and even more in the private sector, and wages, of course, rose at a healthy clip. But I would caution investors against taking a headline increase in jobs at face value. The government's math has been less accurate the past few years for a variety of reasons, and it got January very wrong last year. The best part of the report was clearly the unemployment rate. It fell for the second month in a row to 4.3%. It had been rising steadily through most of 2025 as hiring fell off a cliff. So that tells us the labor market may be on the mend.
And everyone is talking about that unemployment rate falling to 4.3%. Is it a job market that is stabilizing, or is it too early to tell that?
It might be too early to tell, but we've seen a lot of evidence lately that things are starting to stabilize. Hiring is not picking up a great deal. Companies aren't rushing out to add new workers, but they're not laying very many people off, and they're kind of waiting to see what happens with the economy. If the economy starts to grow a little more, I think we'll see hiring pick up.
And it's kind of status quo in terms of that, the job stabilization, not a lot of people losing their jobs, but also not a lot of jobs being added. In terms of the sectors that did get some of these jobs, you mentioned, and we heard in that report, that healthcare accounted for roughly 60% of the new jobs. What does that tell you?
Well, that's actually probably the only bad part of the report, or not great part. Most of the hiring is still being done by healthcare. Healthcare essentially accounted for all the new jobs and then some in 2025. Virtually no other sector is really adding workers. And that's not a good sign. You want, in a really robust economy, companies of all stripes are adding workers. That's simply not the case right now. Obviously, our society is aging. People aren't getting younger. So there's always going to be a need for healthcare or social assistance or whatnot. But until we start seeing more jobs in manufacturing, construction, white-collar jobs, we have to be cautious about overselling what we saw here today.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Some of those revisions always down the road. We saw that with 2025. And speaking of sectors, we also talk about different sectors versus public versus private. You can see there from the rapid response accounts talking about Secretary Scott Bessent of the Treasury saying this is what we've been setting the table for all of 2025. There were more 170,000 private sector jobs, and there was a decrease about 40,000 in government jobs. We are reprioritizing or privatizing the economy. In terms of what that means versus private versus public, can you explain?
Well, as we all know, the federal government cut a lot of jobs last year, but the truth is the government almost never cuts jobs, and if it does, it doesn't cut them for long. President Bill Clinton, 20 plus years ago, cut hundreds of thousands of jobs, and within about 10 years, they all came back. President Trump's not going to be here forever, and it's very unlikely his followers, particularly if it's a Democrat, is going to stick to his policy. So for the time being, yeah, you're going to see federal job reductions, but it's probably not a long-term trend. At the same time, what has gone unnoticed is that state and local governments have been adding lots of jobs. So federal government employment overall hasn't really gone down much at all.
That is interesting to note how different the state and local versus the federal is in terms of those job numbers movements. I want to ask you, because at the end of that report, Edward Lawrence said they might be kind of interested in staying put in terms of the interest rate cuts. And we know President Trump already has his pick, Kevin Warsh, out there for who will succeed Jerome Powell in terms of this. What do we expect from the interest rate cut perspective? Does this give us any sign with the job growth?
Most certainly. The report was good enough to keep the Federal Reserve from cutting interest rates anytime soon. Investors actually pushed back the expected next cut to July from June. And frankly, we can't guarantee there's going to be any cuts this year. At least two Federal Reserve officials have come out this week rather bluntly, and unusual in my view, came out and said, no, we don't really need any more rate cuts this year if things keep going as planned. Now, naturally, Trump's new chairman, when he comes in, is probably going to want to cut rates. And there's room for the Fed to cut rates a couple of times. But given the labor market is stabilizing, the Fed's not going to be rushing to cut rates very much or much at all, even if the new chairman wants to do so.
That's a very good point. President Trump already has joked that if they don't cut rates with the chairman, he's not going to be too pleased with that new chairman of the Federal Reserve. Jeffrey, anything else you're monitoring right now? It was a kind of a good jobs report, but there's obviously so much complexity into it. Anything else you're keeping an eye on? Anything else down the line that you are kind of going to be reporting on?
I think, as Ed Lawrence noted, the job market started actually slowing sharply in 2024. This was even before President Trump took office again, before the tariffs, before the DOGE-related federal job cuts. The government marked down the number of jobs created in 2024 from about 2 million to, I think it said was 1.2 or 1.4 million. So we were seeing this happen even before Trump took office. And that just reflects long-term changes in the economy. Going forward, the economy is not going to be adding as many jobs as it used to because our population just isn't growing. There's not enough people to fill all the jobs that companies want to fill, assuming they want to fill.
That is a very good point. All right, Jeffrey, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, your reporting, your insight here on Live Now from Fox.